Donald Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, has been billed as the star witness of the hush money trial, but clearly he's been ignoring rule number one: save your best stuff for the stand and don't play into the defense's best arguments against you. For example, he promised on X on April 24th that he will cease posting about Trump on X or on his podcast, something clearly prosecutors would like him to stop doing. But apparently that did not include his TikTok live, because here he was last night.
When I put out that tweet that turned around and said that I was not going to discuss anything to do with the trial or my former employer or anything like that. And I think I've lived up to that. The MAGA morons, hook, line, and sinker. If Donald Trump told them 1 + 1 = 3, they will fight you tooth and nail. That's the crazy thing, too, right? Those hats are hideous.
Oh, my God.
No. I'm not saying it. Look, people always like, oh, my God, everything about Trump you hate. That's not true. It's not true. It's not true at all. I am just saying that they are not the kind of hats that you wear to, I don't even know how to describe them. They're with the string that goes across the top of it. I mean, it's just, it's an ugly hat.
They have the string.
It's as ugly a hat as his red gold sneakers are. I mean, the sneakers are ugly too.
I want to bring in Washington Post staff writer Peter Jamison, who just wrote an extensive piece on Cohen, and Jeremy Saland is back with us. I'm going to start with you, Peter, because you did such a deep dive. So here's a guy who says, I'm not going to talk about this on X. I'm not going to talk about Donald Trump on my podcast. And yet, to raise money, and if people are not familiar with that live version of TikTok, people can post emojis and he makes money off of it. So that's what all that stuff is that's popping up. But is this kind of classic Michael Cohen?
Yeah, I mean, look, Michael Cohen is making a strong case for himself being the most irrepressibly voluble star witness in history at this point. I mean, he's written 2 memoirs on his experiences with former President Donald Trump. He's hosted a very popular podcast. Actually, he's had a number of celebrities on to both, talk about his personal journey working for Trump and then turning against him, and also his broader thoughts on Trump and the political movement he leads. And I think this is, in a sense, classic Michael Cohen. I mean, he's been very chatty in a way that I'm sure has given prosecutors some agita at various moments about the things that he, directly or indirectly, the things he will be addressing when he takes the stand in this trial.
Maybe chatty, bordering on... He can't stop himself, Jeremy. And also, I guess we could make the argument that agita may not even describe it, because what happened today in court was there have been complaints from the defense side. Look, you've got this gag order on Donald Trump that he can't talk about witnesses, but witnesses are going out there and they're saying all this stuff about my client, to which the judge said they need to be careful. They need to watch, because why not? There's a chance that Donald Trump then would be able to respond to them. How much agita is there for prosecutors from a Michael Cohen going on last night?
Out of the gate, it's that soft. I'd be being cruel to people who are acting sophomoric to say that Michael Cohen is being sophomoric. So is Donald Trump, and the prosecution has to. They can't control Trump, but they can control Michael Cohen.
Can they?
You beat me to I finished my sentence. To a certain point that they can be on top of him, and they can tell him, you're going to subject yourself on that stand to cross-examination. We as prosecutors are going to try to take some of that steam out of the engine of the defense and bring out your credibility issues. We're going to bring out some of the things that you said, because they're going to cross you on it. But the more you do it, the more you're going to be portrayed, and in fact will be a guy who has an agenda, who lacks credibility, who just, when you leave this courtroom, when you're done, it's going to be following you for the rest of your days. Is that what you want to do? And don't ruin this case. We're doing everything we can to find those pieces to sort of corroborate you through other means, so it's not just on your shoulder, whether it's David Pecker, whether it's any witness who's come before us. But if you continue to do this, you are going to damn this case. And that's going to be on you, and we can only protect you so much.
We don't know, obviously, what has been said to him, but it would make sense to me, Peter, that what Jeremy just laid out could be something that prosecutors would say. Look, don't put this case in jeopardy. Don't put your testimony in jeopardy. We're going to try to do what we can to essentially rehabilitate you. I don't think, based on any conversations that I've ever had or ever seen with Michael Cohen, that he wants to ruin the case. He would like, frankly, to see Donald Trump pay for what he believes he has done. So why is he doing this? I know I'm asking you to get into his brain, but as somebody who has tried essentially to at least look at him in a deep way, why?
Well, so the problem here is that, as you pointed out, Michael Cohen's credibility as a witness will be a central issue in this case. It may well end up being the central issue in the case, depending on what corroborating documents the prosecution can produce. And with every statement, with every thing a witness writes, any way they rehash the story of what they're going to be telling on the witness stand just gives defense attorneys more fodder to pick apart their statements, to look for potential inconsistencies, and to present those as challenges to Michael Cohen's credibility. So, what strikes me about him is I think this is kind of a tension at the heart of his personality and certainly at the heart of his public persona at this moment, is that, Michael Cohen is now someone who has kind of rebranded himself as a truth teller, as someone who's speaking out against a powerful and vengeful person. But we're now in a situation where speaking out in that way can actually hinder the cause that he claims he's trying to advance. And so I think that's the struggle we're watching sort of play out here.
So as we were talking about the gag order and two men who continue to talk about things that maybe their lawyers would prefer that they not talk about, Jeremy, Donald Trump may have been busy over the lunch break because there was a new posting on Truth Social. I'm going to read it. The judge has taken away my constitutional right to free speech. I am the only presidential candidate in history to be gagged. This whole trial is rigged. And by taking away my freedom of speech, this highly conflicted judge is rigging the presidential of 2024, the extra word in there, 2024 election interference. This is nothing new and this is nothing true. So it's important to say that. But it doesn't break the gag order, does it? Because he's allowed to say that about the judge.
It's not a witness. It's not the prosecution's family. So the gag order is very limited, and that's why it's okay to be there. But if you are not wanting to stand on top of the table and scream and say Donald Trump is decimating the criminal justice system and making a mockery of it for his own selfish gain, forget that he's innocent in the courtroom. And when I say forget, he's always innocent in the courtroom, just like anyone else, just like you and me, same due process, same rights. But for him to make such statements so recklessly dangerous that people are going to sort of, grab onto that and run with it is really despicable. It's despicable. It's terrible. It's horrendous. And this is where, again, there's no one controlling him. Blanche needs to grab him by the back of his neck and say, stop, let's deal with this case. Then we'll beat this or not. And then you have your shot out there. But stop it. Stop it. It's deplorable.
Let me go back for a second to his former fixer, Michael Cohen. Peter, you said that when he does take the stand, it's going to mark the climax of Cohen's transformation. He has described himself as the canary in the coal mine for millions of Americans who are mesmerized by Trump. So I am curious, what are you going to be watching and listening for from his testimony, and particularly anything he says about his relationship with Trump when he testifies?
Well, kind of questions, one that's very important inside the courtroom, one that's not so important inside the courtroom about Michael Cohen. One is the extent to which people truly buy into his story that he's a reformed human being. He's now, following his moral true north and trying to do the right thing, not motivated by self-interest or vindictiveness towards his former boss. The much more important question inside the courtroom is not that kind of it doesn't have that sort of metaphysical framing to it. It's more just about, can Michael Cohen be trusted in terms of what he is telling the jury? And perhaps even more importantly, can the prosecution give jurors the confidence in what he's saying by corroborating what he's saying with, either the testimony of other witnesses or any documents that they may have. And so I think, Michael Cohen's demeanor when he takes the stand will be important, his delivery, the extent to which he can sort of stand up under cross-examination. But I also think the supports that that the district attorney's office can provide to sort of buttress what he says to the jury will be extremely important. And we still don't have a great sense yet of what those are going to be. So I'll be watching for that as well.